backbench. Let's return now to the discussion around politics today. Joining me now, as he does every Monday, is the member for Casey, Aaron Violi, Liberal MP. Aaron, this controversy around Barnaby Joyce, the latest controversy around the former Deputy Prime Minister comparing ballot papers to bullets. What's your assessment of it?
Hey, Kieran, great to be with you. I mean, we've seen today that Barnaby Joyce has apologised for those comments, and I think it's a reminder for all of us as leaders and elected officials, but not just as leaders and elected officials, all people that have a platform on the media to be careful with what we say, and sometimes that can be misinterpreted and people can read the wrong thing into those messages. So I think it's a reminder for all of us, and as I said, Barnaby's apologised about that today.
Particularly in the context of what we've heard from the federal police recently about the increasing threats to MPs over the last couple of years, Aaron.
Yeah, and we've seen some really dangerous activities around, Josh Burns' officers being attacked, Peter Khalil and many others. So we've seen a heightened activity around electorate officers, and we've seen an increase in threats made to members of parliament. So we should all be very conscious of that and very careful of that. We've seen that increased activity, which is concerning for us all. We are very lucky in this country that as members of parliament we can go to our shops, we can have listening posts, we can engage. I was at a festival in Upwey in my community yesterday, and there was no threat or no danger there, and we need to make sure that continues, because ultimately it means we're accessible and available to our community.
Yeah, indeed. Is it something you think Barnaby Joyce might be moved on by Peter Dutton to the backbench?
Ultimately, decisions around shadow cabinet are for Peter and for David Littleproud, the leader of the Nationals. As a first-term backbencher, I'm not going to be providing any advice or commentary on that for them. I did see the Prime Minister's comments. Yeah, absolutely. But, it was a little bit of an overreach, and quite ironic that the Prime Minister's lecturing Peter Dutton on what to do with the shadow cabinet after he left the incompetent Minister Giles and Minister O'Neill in their roles for 8 to 12 months, and he still left them in cabinet. So we're not going to be lectured to by the Prime Minister, who, let's be honest, doesn't even have the ability to decide who is in his cabinet. He's at the whim of the faceless men and women of the unions and the factions. They tell him who he has to have, and then he shuffles the decks. And we've seen that with Minister Collins, Minister O'Neill, Minister Giles, clearly not up to it, but the Prime Minister has no ability to move them on, and ultimately it's the Australian people that suffer because of the incompetence of the Prime Minister, the weakness of the Prime Minister, and a cabinet that's not up to it, but there's no consequences for them.
Tony Burke has been made the Minister for Home Affairs and Immigration, so obviously a stronger voice, though, in the House of Reps, able to push back more forcefully, no doubt, in what's been a difficult area for the government, Aaron.
Yeah, well, we've seen the Prime Minister acknowledge through his actions that Minister O'Neill and Minister Giles weren't up to it. He's now moved on to Minister Burke. Now, many in business would question his effectiveness in terms of industrial relations and workplace relations, and we've seen the CFMEU issue that he's left for Minister Watt now. But interestingly, they moved immigration and home affairs into the one portfolio while creating, I think, three assistant ministers and 2 or 3 special envoys. Clearly, they don't want anyone other than Minister Burke to answer questions about this portfolio, because we know ultimately that whoever the minister is, their heart's not in it. They're not prepared to keep the borders safe. They're not prepared to make the tough decisions to keep Australians safe. So they've clearly put someone in that they think can do a better job of political spin and defend their incompetence in Parliament. I mean, this is a minister, don't forget, that when he was the Minister for Immigration under the Gillard government, 83 votes in 80 days under his ministerial watch at that time.
Finally, the CPI number out on Wednesday. This is very much anticipated in the political world and, of course, economists as well, but quite a few nervous households around Australia are awaiting what this means for the RBA.
Absolutely. It's going to be very much a watch number this week, and then obviously the flow-on effects to the RBA decision on August 5th and 6th. I noted the Treasurer's comments yesterday on Sky. He's clearly tilling the soil and preparing people for a number that's not going to be great. It's deeply concerning when I'm in the community. Cost of living is the biggest issue that people are talking to me about. There is a real fear of interest rates going up and what that will do for businesses, for small businesses in particular, but also for families and the impact on their budgets. People are talking about interest rates like I've never seen before, and they're deeply concerned. And what we've seen is this inflation is homegrown. The RBA governor admits that. It is a government, as I've said on this show many times, they're treating the symptoms, not the cause. They're making inflation worse. And if it goes up on August 5th and 6th interest rates, there is no doubt that that's on the Treasurer and on the Prime Minister and the Albanese government.
Well, it would be the first one after the budget. That's the timing not ideal for the government, that's for sure. Aaron Violi, thank you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Kieran. See you next week.
Let's have a look at the